will start. And he's recording. Derek, I might also need help how to share, because I need to share the presentation, right? Or do you share it from there?
No, you have it.
I can share it. Okay. So actually, it's not open for some reason. Just give me a hot second, you all, because we had a different presentation here. Sorry. This has been a busy day and I need to, that's right. I'm just going to stay calm because like we are bringing all the people together and we can do this, and Derek is going to like run over and help me, of course, because there is something that I need to hit. But dat weet ook die dag 2. Daar zo. Okay.
Dan moet jij...
Dan moet ik present. Okay. I don't know of this presenting thing, but you know. As Derek used to say during COVID, we're just coaches like trying to do all kinds of things.
Got it.
Okay, great.
Now, do you want to...
Fantastic.
No deal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Baie dankie, liefie. Of course, we're speaking a lot of Afrikaans here, so Derek is really practicing. So we are at ornamentation day 2. We are going to just look at a couple of things based on what it is we did yesterday, and let me just find it. And so if you remember yesterday, I was talking a little about and saying that we start to layer ornaments, and that is we start to use one set of ornaments that inspires another. So the first thing we're going to do is looking at combining units of pitches, and we're just going to talk quickly just for the students here in Pretoria who were not with us yesterday, to just remind them what we are talking about. We're talking about passing tones, right? Those are the tones that move between 2 chord tones to fill in the gaps. We called it yesterday. We're talking about appoggiaturas and acciaccatura. Appoggiaturas, that is a dissonant pitch on the beat that will resolve. An acciaccatura, which is a quick note that crushes into the note, that doesn't take any rhythmic space, that very often, in fact, is used to embellish an appoggiatura, as you'll see on the screen here. We're talking about mordents, which are upper and lower neighbor tones, and turns, and we at BCBC color code those to help us name it, right? If you can name something, you understand what you're doing. So the purpose of this system of ornamenting is to force you to name your ornaments, and not just to noodle around on something you heard once on YouTube, because you don't understand exactly what you're singing, and you're like, I heard this ornament once, but then when you recreate it, it's not clear exactly what that is. If you write something on a page and you cannot explain what it is, you're also probably, in Afrikaans we say tas in die donker, you're like moving around in the dark and you're trying to figure out where you are, right? What does that mean? You want to understand where you are harmonically, because we call our ornaments by names that relate to harmony. Passing tones are not chord tones, but they are not taking important places in the beat, in the beats and in the music, right? On the other hand, appoggiaturas are non-chord tones that are important. So this is a good way for us to show, and this is for those of you who are studying the Vakai project at the moment, this is the chapter we are in. Somebody can tell me what page it is, I cannot remember. This slide is from the chapter that we are on today, according to the August bar class schedule. So we have this skeleton, again, this idea of like, what is the skeleton of the music? It's super simple again. So again, try to not be bored because it's simple, but you're trying to really get your ducks in a row about how you're going to ornament it. So the first layer, we're just going to write 8th notes. So this is what I did. I wrote passing tones to fill in the first 3 notes. But then I was like, how about a non-chord tone? You put an appoggiatura on the next one. Why don't we make a little row of, sorry, I'm really between languages, yeah, you'll all excuse me, a row of appoggiaturas. I just kind of stuck with the appoggiaturas, right? Remember how I said yesterday, the most effective thing you can do is to put those blue notes, is to put that. If you, we just, what would be another way I could have done it? Right, if I just put mordents and I just keep or. Right, but putting these blue notes and doing the unexpected, the non-harmonic tone is going to really fix it. I wonder, can you all see that screen? Do you all want to sing the skeleton? Add. Now keep hearing this, keep tracking the skeleton as you sing the first layer of ornament. Not everybody was tracking the appoggiatura. Okay, one more time, first layer. Such beautiful young voices. Derek is so glad that he doesn't have to sing alone today. So what can we do with this? And this I suggest to everybody, if you are ornamenting piangerò or lasciacchio pianga, you can always write this first layer of ornament. You're just writing notes that surrounding. So in the chapter that you're reading, you will see we are hugging the melody, right? So that's what you want to say. You are not going to go off. You're just like, it's what's along the road. What are you seeing along the road? That is pitches that surround the skeleton. You're hugging the melody, or you're not going far afield at this point. We will look at some examples of how you can go further afield in a hot second. Once you've made that first layer, you can start to play with that. And you can say, okay, I wrote a passing tone, but what if I want to vary that more? And I put myself a pink little turn, and this is in fact an inverted turn. Put an acciaccatura on the appoggiatura. Now do 2 turns. And now put appoggiaturas on your appoggiatura. I mean, again, you remember how we said yesterday that something can feel like an appoggiatura even if it's not necessarily an appoggiatura? You create this idea with the seufzer, yeah? Everybody want to sing the second layer. 1 and 2 and. So for the singers in the class here, today in the masterclass, we're talking about how the stresses of the poetry move you to sing some pitches longer in malinconia, right? Right, and Derek was explaining how some of those notes will stretch and take more time in the bar. The same thing happens with dissonance in purely melodic music, even if it has no stress because of words. By nature, the dissonance is going to take more time. So when you're going to shape, you're always going to sing that kind of blue dissonant note a little longer. We are moving on to see how a master like Mozart uses it. So some of you, if you've been a member of ours for a while, you have seen this before. This is Mozart ornamenting Mozart. And this comes from an aria that was written for Aloysia, let me just check on Aloysia Weber. And he was in fact in love with her and wrote her music to get her attention, but she wasn't interested. And in fact, he ended up with her sister. You know, life doesn't always work out the way we want it to be. So he wrote the aria for her, and in the year, let me just check my years here. I don't have it memorized. Oh, it's on the slide? Oh, I didn't see that. Oh, sorry, don't have my glasses on. The original is 1778, and the ornaments were written in 1783 and sent to her. And so this is a good way for us. Do I have my glasses somewhere? Give me 1 second. As I say, I always pretend that I can see, but I can't actually see. Okay, so If we look at some of these examples, we see how Mozart uses this exact same thing. There's one thing here that we see that we have not talked about, and this is the anticipation, this anticipatory notation. And we will get more to this in lesson 13 when we get there, because you will see that he writes, right, is the original, and he anticipates the E flat. Now, if you're a BCBC member, you know that that triplet is dark red and it's a mordant. And you can see exactly what he did, right? He was Mozart, he was a genius, but he was doing a simple thing. So can you, if you look across in the slide, the original, you already know, you see those open thirds and you immediately, it's begging for an appoggiatura. If you understand what Derek has been talking about today in Pretoria and what you know, non so donde viene, you know that those are the stresses of the poem and those are begging for appoggiaturas. If it was a recitative, you would want to put appoggiaturas, you also want to do that in the music. So instead of singing, which is super square, which some people think Mozart likes, some people like their Mozart square, but Mozart didn't like his music square, because what did he sing to his girlfriend? I mean, his fake girlfriend. What else could he have written on Viene? What other appoggiatura can we have? Shouted out Pretoria. What other pitch instead of C sharp would also be an appoggiatura? E flat. They're asleep. 7 o'clock. And you also see how you have this anticipatory notation again. If you didn't have that, the appoggiaturas would have just been right? But we make this anticipatory motion and you have yeah, you also change the note on donde from donde viene to donde viene. Next line down, you see him use two turns on top of each other. This is the second time the aria happens, and you will see I'm going to show you the aria in a hot second. He ornaments the aria from the beginning. He doesn't wait for the da capo to start ornamenting, right? The ornamentation happens all the time, because when you look at this, it looks like a skeleton. If you have done your homework, you understand that that is not a fully fledged melody, and you are supposed to bring your imagination to it. So the second time it happens, he starts with the same appoggiatura, but then he fills out the space more. And you see how there's less and less white space on the page? People are like, oh, that's just too much. Well, not for Mozart, right? And people are like, oh, no, I don't like my Mozart with so many ornamentation. Mozart did, yeah? Look at the next line. Sounds like De Vieni non tarda, right? Just kind of like open chord tones. This music never happened exactly this way in Mozart's time. What is he imagining? It's like, Aloysia, please don't sing that. Sing this instead. You see how he's layering ornaments? You see how he does exactly the same thing? He did this once. He's like, I'm not going to do the same. You see the dark green? It's a new harmony note. But you see how he comes back to the skeleton, okay? So we are going to look, we told you about Celoni. This is Celoni. She actually calls it skeleton in her book and then uses variation. So this is a slightly different use of how to use units of pitches. In the old days, there was a skill that was taught called partimenti, and it was the skill of how to create melodic lines on bass lines that were pretty stock. So this idea of filling out a skeleton in different ways was very much part of how they worked, right? And so here you have, again, a very simple skeleton, and you will recognize part of the skeleton from something we used yesterday. We filled out the rest of that skeleton when we were playing appoggiatura games with Derek last night, right? But you see here, she uses the first variation. You see all the blue notes? It's notated as little notes. I remind you that the dissonances were always notated as little notes in order not to confuse the harmony group, the continuo group, but is played or sung. And this moment, this cadential moment 6-4-5-3 is very much stuck in the time of Chinoni. That's why all the exercises end like that. So I'm not going to go through all of this. These slideshows will be available to all of you, but you can see how everything she wrote, we can color code and explain what she does. Let us look at number 6. If we look at number 6, you see that she anticipates the skeleton by bringing it early. And then she writes a scale down. She repeats that pattern. Okay, now, Derek is going to put for you in the chat, and I'm going to switch to the iPad, homework and a gift that is a PDF, and that is available to everybody. We will also send it to you. Derek, is there something in the chat that we should talk about?
No,
not
Can you
yet.
help me find your download?
Sorry?
Want me to take a tour of your computer?
Oh, okay. It is coming. In the meantime, I'm going to show you what it is. Okay, so yesterday we were working on Varoro Pupille, right? And how many people, when we were doing that, now I can of course not see you, but I will scroll down to see who's like going like, yep. When we were doing Varoro Pupille with ornamentation yesterday, how many people were thinking, it's kind of like La Shakyopianga, right? Because if you remember that we were saying that the skeleton of Varoro Pupille, and this is La Shakyopianga, right? So we have this repeated note which does not take an appoggiatura, and this is a very particular example. Normally you'll be like, oh, you cannot have two of the same notes. You must put an appoggiatura there, but this is part of this. Here there is an appoggiatura in the tone, but La Shakyo. Can I zoom this? On the.
Oh, no.
No, everybody can see. Okay, I'm sorry. I forgot that I can do this because I was trying to zoom all kinds of things yesterday and I couldn't do that. Okay, so if you are going to write ornamentation for La Shakyopianga, you can use these same things. So we made you a whole page. I did only the first part, again, color coded. So your homework is color code your work, write your own ornamentation, but don't write what you cannot name. So you will see that I did not choose to write this kind of straight up appoggiatura because I want to maintain this kind of basic shape. So I picked, remember we call Schleifer, yeah? Remember that 3 little fast notes, and then a turn, passing tones. Then this one you will remember from the Garcia list is not one of the ones that we use all the time, but if you study your like Vakai project, you have that little list of appoggiatura substitutes. So if your imagination fails you, just go. So I try to use almost all of the ones that Vakai uses, right? So what else could I have written? I could have started with a simple appoggiatura, but dressed it up, which would have made it less stark. Yeah, yeah, then it would not be so. But still, my gut is to like pick one of the appoggiatura substitutes that will allow us to still feel those two notes, but they are varied. Turn, passing tones, Funky Garcia appoggiatura substitute. Right, you can say this is an escape tone for the theory people, with a lower appoggiatura and an anticipation. Yeah, you see how I can name all of them? B flat is an appoggiatura, C is an escape tone, G is an appoggiatura to A, and the first A is an anticipatory motion to the resolution. Yeah, I wish that they would teach this in harmony and counterpoint at schools instead of Beethoven's string quartets. As I just said to the students, they teach harmony and counterpoint to violinists as if a violinist would ever have to make up his own notes. Violinists only just ever play the notes that's on the page, right? This should be, harmony and counterpoint should 100% be taught for singers in the first place, because they are the people who need to do this, yeah? Do you like my ornament so far? Here's a lower appoggiatura, a lower neighbor tone. Now what did I do? The original is, my first thought was like, I'm going to repeat the G, right? Because that's going to heighten the effect. Right? Because it's going to build emotion.
Which is called what?
Which is called what?
An emotion builder.
Not an emotion.
But
an appoggiatura, not an emotion. Derek keeping me on the straight and narrow.
People get confused, but no, if you look at Garcia treatise, he talks about appoggiaturas of 6, the appoggiaturas of 5.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in fact, that is a much more normal appoggiatura to use than this one, which we call, like, it's really unprepared, right? It is an appoggiatura that has a jump, is approached by a jump, and that is we don't find that as often, yeah? So this is a much more normal thing to do. Not an emotion builder in appoggiatura. We'll put that on a t-shirt. But what did I do before? I wanted to do an emotion builder again, right? Because I'm always looking for the blue notes. Tell me you don't want to sing that. I mean, you want to sing that, right? You want to sing that. You're going to be like, oh, that A is going to sound so beautiful in my voice. Now, if you don't have a particularly beautiful A, you're not going to sing that ornament, right? The whole beauty of this is you're becoming a composer. You're writing something that works for your voice. You start to see patterns if you do this a lot. This can always be repeated. A lower note like this can always be repeated by a pattern of 4 notes. And then I have little mordant. I love myself a Schleifer. Right, Schleifer is another emotion. Look, all ornaments are emotion builders. It's also so funny for me to do this with Derek sitting over there, like keeping an eye on all the computers that nothing blows up in Pretoria. Schleifer is a very, very interesting ornament, because in old treatises, when they describe them, it almost sounds like they're talking about scooping. They say, oh, you should attack the pitch from below. And you're like, what the hell are you all talking about? Like, why we want to try and sing clean pitches, right? But what they are doing, what they're talking about is this ornament that ends up in the German literature being called a Schleifer, Schleifer. Derek can put it in the chat. And it is this attacking from the bottom, and they experience it as a, oh, you really mean it more, because you're doing. That A of Handel's is already a passing tone. If I just fill in this, end up with and replace with a tone. Now I have. Now I'm going to use the same idea of a Schleifer, but I'm going to use it differently rhythmically. So I could have done. Okay, that would have been, because what is this in music? Somebody tell me, what does this make? It sounds like a sequence, right? It sounds like a sequence. The way to really emotion build your sequence is to kind of sound like you're going to do the same thing, but you do it a little differently. So you have a slightly new idea. First one. Now I'm going to make the Schleifer take longer time, and then I'm going to rearrange the notes of the turn. Right, so it still sounds the same, but it's a little different. I'm going to use a triplet here and a blue note. Okay, you think you can continue doing that? And you can make new ornaments? Trust me, you see that I'm hugging the melody. I've done nothing wild. You know, you're like, okay, I haven't used this Schleifer. Try a Schleifer. If you're like, okay, that sounds idiotic there, try an appoggiatura. Yeah, as long as you know which cookies, which coloring pencils you can pull out of your pocket, you can do this. Shake your head and say, I can do this. I can do this, yes, because the number one thing that happens with ornamentation is people feel like, no, Rachel Young is a genius. I'm not a genius. Mozart was a genius, but we use the same tools to dress up a melody. Don't tell yourself that it's too much. There's no such thing as too much. These are ornamental styles, more is more. The PDF that you have has a lot of other stuff in it. Has it arrived yet?
Yeah.
Great.
Jaren
terug, years ago. So this Melanie already printed it out. Man, that woman is quick on it. She's like, here are the pieces of paper. So what you have here is very good research material. You will see, and this is the bass clef. This is special for Andy Garland and every baritone whoever has sat through every soprano aria being ornamented. This is what in many treatises we find, which is 60 notes on tonic, 60 notes on dominant, and 16, and one note on tonic, and its resolution, right? And these are, you will see that it uses the same kind of patterns, scales, arpeggios in this case, articulation, flips we talked about yesterday, which is thirds. Why is this good? Because if you're going to sing N'Quella Fanno, Rosina, any kind of these fast Rossini arias that has fast scales in, for example, in the caballettas, you're going to see a lot this kind of motion that you need to fill out, and you're like, how many ways can I get to the dominant chord? The next page is even more interesting and more complex, and we have marked the tones and scales, mordents, and again, you can absolutely color code and understand what's happening. So for example, when we put mordents and scales together, we have right, again, it sounds like you, or looks like you're recreating the wheel, but you are really not. You're just using the same patterns. On the next page is Treble Clef. It's the same thing. I have two different brackets here because sometimes it's useful to be able to move from this page to this page. And you will see the first 5 lines all has as a skeleton this. And all the ways you can get there. Right?
The top 5.
This one?
The top 5 lines. Because often in this kind of arrangement, the first line is the bottom one.
The first, oh, yes. Yeah.
So the top 5.
The top 5, or the top 5 and the bottom 2, right? So if we look at the very top line, you have mordent, turn, scale. The blue note marks the arrival, right? In this case, it's not an appoggiatoria. I just used my favorite colors from my apartment. If you ever wondered what color my apartment is in New York, it's teal and lime green. And so, oh, sorry. If you're not particularly good at singing, either A, get good at it, or avoid that kind of ornament, yeah? Or avoid that kind of ornament while you're getting good at it. What's happening? Drama.
I'm trying to help this situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just keep making.
So if you then zoom in, then you can see the whole line.
Oh, Okay.
And then they can see the whole
Oh,
thing.
yeah, thank you. I'm sorry. I really, what do I know? What do I know?
There's
There
a
it
very
says,
large screen.
we now have now we have a large screen. Yeah, it's complicated. Let's look at like this one that is now on the top of the screen. This pattern you will find a lot. It breaks down to 4. Very useful. If we will get to flips, and I think, right, we haven't done this exercise yet. Yeah, what we call flips. Very important coloratura exercise to do. That is not in Vakai, for those of you who are doing Vakai. Yeah? It is in the book. We have added it because while Vakai has all of the coloratura patterns, it doesn't really have this exercise particularly, okay? There's one more page on that. So the one that we just looked at was Viardot, and the other one is Marchesi. I want us all to take a little second to think that these people were teaching voice, but it looks like they were teaching harmony, right? And so that was very much part of how singers were trained. You were trained to sing agility and make ornamentation and understand harmony all at the same time. It was all part of your training, right? So here we have Marchesi, we can do 68. Do we want? Yes, do we do? We are going to sing on doobie doobie doo. And we're going to take a breath and we're going to sing the next bar. Okay, here we go. Derek loves this because he's a fabulous, even bigger. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, it doesn't want to stay there. Okay. I don't know. Get closer. Ready? And. Breathe and. It's hard, but keep your eye moving forward. Yeah, you're trying to not read all the pitches. Look at the colors. You like tell your voice to turn or sing a scale. Yeah, this is E. Ready and. It's too high. Oh my God. It's like, seriously, let's do 69. Let's do 69. Okay, so you see how your voice, you keep moving forward and you're telling your voice, I'm not trying to learn 32 notes. The trick in ornamentation and coloratura singing is to start to see these patterns, and your voice, you have sung scales your whole life. You don't need to learn the notes, okay? So we're going to sing a scale, then we're going to do a turn, then we're going to do an inverted turn, and we're going to do that twice, and then we're going to sing a scale up. And we're going to sing a scale down, inverted turn, up and down scale short, inverted. We will only sing 3 bars of this without breathing. 1 and go. And so on. A lot of skill in ornamentation and coloratura alike is about saying, I get it, and I didn't have to decipher it. You are all turning your brains and your vocal cords into crisis areas by thinking that you have to study every note like it's Greek. It isn't. It's just triads filled in with harmony and non-harmony notes, okay? So the last one is Panovka, which is crazy hard. This is one that I picked because it has big intervals in it. If you've sung coloratura or tried to write ornamentation that is exciting and has lots of intervals. Like if you're Michael Spires, you want to sing this kind of ornament. You can just be like, that shit's just hard, right? Everybody's basically going to find that hard. Or if you're particularly good at particularly good at arpeggios. We heard some arpeggios today in ornamentation of Tornami Vagheggiar. I strongly urge you to make sure that the notes you're singing down actually belong to the harmony of the chord you're in. It's very easy for people to end up with or kind of random notes. You have like this is the chord if you're going to sing. Right, harmony for singers. 7:39. Oh God, I have so many things that I still want to do. And now I am going to try and do that because I want to show you some of the Mozart that we have not looked at. So I will also share these files. This is all of Alcandro that has all of these Mozart ornaments, but let's look for a hot second at Lucio Silla. This is another famous example that is not in the book. I decided to do the less famous example for the book and left this one out. But here again, you will see this is printed in the appendix of the Bärenreiter Lucio Silla. It is ornaments by Mozart for this aria. So what you will see printed in black is in fact the ornament. And I took the time to write in small on the top what the original is. So if you were looking at the original score, you would see but here he has added an ornament and a passing tone. Actually doesn't write the ornament, right in the original is of course not the appoggiatura notated, but in the variation, or in the ornament, I should say, he does have it. We'll get to variations tomorrow. Here the appoggiatura is notated. Can somebody in the class tell me why the appoggiatura is notated here? Look down to the orchestra. What do you see? You see that the orchestra is taking part in that appoggiatura? The orchestra is also playing an appoggiatura, which is why it is actually notated in the score. Yeah, we're going to look at a finta in a second and see how that is not true. And the ornament. I want to do all of this. He leaves. This is part of the original aria. That's the original. The ornament. Okay. Let's look for look at this beautiful one. Yeah, you see how he loves a turn. Judith Malafront, I don't know if she's on the call. She says that when she color codes her ornaments, everything's pink because she loves turns, right? She famously says that it's useful to do it because it helps you vary your ornamentation. Because people will gravitate towards one kind of thing and it kind of makes you like mix it up. So the original here is look quite how complicated he gets. Lots of filigree. People are like, oh, this is slow music, you shouldn't sing so many ornaments. But it was very much part of the style to write plenty of what does this look like? People sing Ach ich fühl's, yeah? Ach ich fühl's is a slow aria, but then it has all of this motion in it. He does it all the time. Here's also a pretty one, yeah? In the original is I mean, how many times have you heard Mozart arias that has that pattern in it? That pattern isn't a melody written by the genius Mozart. That's a skeleton, yeah? Salieri could have written that skeleton, and God knows most of us could have written this as well. That's exact, it's a pancake recipe. There's nothing special about it. What in fact here is special is how he fills it out, but it's just a scale. So beautiful. Okay. I will share all of these files with you and see if there's a particularly, this isn't part of the bootcamp special topics this year, but there will be a session on cadenzas later in August. This is just to show you, this is a typical cadenza. The cadenza is by Mozart. And this is to show you how the same patterns are used to write the cadenza. So in the music is, this section just ends, oopsie. Yeah, it's just that. And what is the cadenza he writes? Sorry, on the 6/4 chord, for those of you who already know lots about cadenzas. He plays, he uses those same exact things, chord turns and units of pitches. It's up. Derek already put the Arya in the chat. Andy Garland did. Okay, great. Because with the markup. Yeah. Because
I sent it to him.
Great, fantastic. Thanks, Andy. So I will also share Alcandro. Okay, what we're going to try and do if this lasts. So this is Sandrina. So at MSU, I'm going to MSU to work on Finta Giardiniera with Melanie's students, and welcome to all the MSU students who are here. What, Michigan?
Michigan State.
Michigan State. Yeah, Michigan State. Looking forward to seeing you all. I can't wait to move into East Lansing and to see you all, especially those of you I know, and I'm looking forward to meeting the new ones. So if you want to go and listen to this aria, it's a beautiful aria. There, I discovered last night in my Airbnb in Pretoria that there is a recording of Renee Fleming singing this with Charles Mackerras, may he rest in peace, was a wonderful musician and a great New Yorker. He and Fleming recorded this aria. This is a famous example of an aria that starts with an appoggiatura. Sadly, both Miss Fleming and Sir Mackerras missed this fact, except all of the other appoggiaturas they did sing. Okay, what am I talking about? So if you look at this, this needs to be in a different way again, right? I need to do this, and then I need to do. That's perfect. Okay, so you will see that in bar 12, in fact, starts this 4-bar phrase because orchestra plays. Right, you see how the voice kind of joins, right? If you really have to say, where is the 4-bar phrase? It doesn't start with the voice. It starts here with the orchestra. Now, this aria does not go like this, sadly. Sorry, Renee Fleming. She sings. But the aria really goes. Right, so this blue note is not optional. Interestingly enough, it keeps happening on the next page. Lungi on bar 16, she dutifully does sing an appoggiatura, and God bless her heart. Charles Mackerras was very much part of this movement of doing research about where the appoggiaturas have to come. Yesterday, we had a lengthy conversation about which appoggiaturas must happen because they're prosodic, and which appoggiaturas you can add because it's a melodic ornament. These appoggiaturas are considered prosodic. Why? Because lungi has a stressed and an unstressed, let me see if I can write, a stressed and an unstressed syllable, and this note must be sung as a dissonant, the same way JMA must be, because there's a rest after it, right? So when you study the appoggiatura rules, it says when you're going to make a break after a word that ends on 2 of the same syllables. Ooh, now what's happening? Okay. Thank you, Derek, for saving my life. Then, but what I want us to try and do in the last 10, 15 minutes is to say, do we see how this kind of seems skeletal? Do you see how this feels exactly the same as those arias that we've heard? Now, this is an ABA aria. This does come back. So you could be a modern singer and be like, well, I'll add like 2 mordants the second time it comes around. Or you could be Mozart and be like, never mind, I'm going to ornament this thing the first time, and then I'm going to ornament the shit out of it the second time, right? Because that is really what they did. So who wants to tell me, if you imagine this after all of those Mozart ornaments that you've heard, what do you think Mozart might have sent to Sandrina if he wanted to marry her instead of Aloysia? Yeah, what could we write instead of this? You see how much white space there is? You're like, oh, I don't want to sing. What could you sing there? Who wants to just call a unit of pitches? What could you possibly do? If you're in pink, I'm in pink, you could do a turn, right? What would that sound like? Right, so that's one idea. You want to do Mozart, you're like, oh, I saw in the Vakai project, you can do a turn and an inverted turn on top of each other. Yeah, could sing. What else could you do? There's a third, you can always fill in a third, yeah? Grab your red pencil. Yes, I know the orchestra is playing, but that's not going to screw us up. Right? You see, if the orchestra plays and you sing, doesn't make a difference.
Suggestion of a chakatura.
A chakatura. Where do you want to put that chakatura? Okay, wrong color. So sometimes when I do this live, sometimes I don't necessarily do the right color. Okay, it's not an exact science. I'm I see more white space. Ooh, Pretoria is apparently having a cappella choir competition, but they cheer louder than they sing. We hear the cheering, but not the singing, which makes me sad. It makes me think there's a lot of crooning going on in Pretoria. What about, how could you vary the appoggiatura? Remember all of those things that we saw, appoggiatura variations? Miss Blue. Oh, you see layering? You see what's happening? I'm like, oh, the acciaccatura was good. I don't know whose idea it was, Rachel's, but what if you put a blue note and what if you put that and you put that? You see how it's literally like a skeleton that now has meat on it, and how this becomes your interpretation, and how this becomes how you bring yourself to the music, not subtext. Yeah. So in many ways, in the ornamental style, the way you ornament or you vary the music becomes how you feel the expression of it. Now, you can do this exercise and fill this thing with 10 ornaments, and then you can decide to do 4 of them here and 6 of them the second time it comes. The purpose here is to wield the tool, right? To keep using the tool, because then eventually you're going to be like, okay, now I don't like that, that's too much or whatever. Even though I want to guide you not to use the words too much, right? Close your eyes, everybody who has been in a Rococo church, in churches in which Mozart worked. Think about what they look. Are they bare? No. They are filled with gold leaf, they are filled with roses and cherubs and flutes and harps and all of that stuff, right? It is extremely ornamental. The idea that we have that Mozart, Handel, Bach are pure is a modern idea. Okay, shall we try another one? Do you want to shake your heads again and say, I can do this? Because you can see how simple it is. All you need to do is take out your color pencils. What is the most
from the people in this room?
What's happening on Dalla? Swap out. What's the most obvious thing to do? Yes, a scale down. What else do you want? And without even doing, just tell me things to put and then we'll take it out if we don't like it. What else can you do? The Schleifer, where do you want to put the Schleifer? I would suggest probably at the beginning, right? Because that's very often where you often do a Schleifer at the beginning, or like when there's a big jump, like, right, is a good place for it. What else can we do? We can, of course, also trill. On Saturday, we're going to have trill class. It's not officially part of boot camp, but if you all want to use the same link and come learn to trill with Derek, Saturday is the day. Everybody's going to trill, get your larynxes nice and loose. What else do we want to do? Somebody tell me where to put a blue note. I have picked blue with my pencil. If you have an iPad, it's so much fun. It's like being in like kindergarten and you just play. Yeah, where can I put a blue note? Tell me any friggin' pitch. Come on. Before the D and maybe before the B as well, right? Because if we put this here, right? So what do we have now? Okay, I can imagine. I already quite like quite a bit of that, yeah?
You know, not suggesting the C sharp instead of E.
C sharp instead of E, where
blue.
The first blue. Here?
No, before the D.
Oh, okay, so let's take out this appoggiatura. This would be a chromatic appoggiatura. You can see how this thing is moving, right? Could also just be, that would carry a lot of emotion, also known as an appoggiatura. I will never forget that, Michelle. Emotional, also called appoggiatura. And emotion builders. This is like here's an emotional builder for you. What if that C sharp would come earlier? Right? What if we move? We are trying to fill space. So this is another tool that you can use. You have this idea and you're like, oh, I like this chromaticism quite a lot. What if I bring it like right here? Now I have made more space for myself. I don't know. Now, at this point, I would say you do have to keep an eye on what's happening on the orchestra, right? Because they are playing with you, and even though they're not moving, they're sitting here. You just kind of have to ask yourself if the strings keep playing this, is it a good idea for you? Don't be afraid of dissonance though, yeah?
So like there, for example, you could be like, oh, well, the chord is pitched to 10, but it's totally okay to have a D above that chord that is on above.
Exactly. What now? Look at this. Now, this is prime real estate for ornamentation. Why do I say that? Do you see what's happening in the orchestra? There's a lot of notes, but it's just harmony. There's no taking part. So what is the skeleton? this doesn't, if this isn't pancake begging for bananas and walnuts, I just don't know. Yeah, that's an American thing, right? And putting stuff with your, okay, pancakes is different in America just for the people like you can't put bananas in pancakes. Americans have like thick pancakes, you know what I mean? It's more, what? Have I ever been?
Harry's pancakes is whatever they want.
Oh, that's true. Harry's pancakes, but you roll it up. Like Americans put that stuff inside the pancake, yeah? So what walnuts can you be put in this? Turns and 16th notes. We can put a turn here. We can put like maybe a scale going up here. We can maybe put another turn here, and maybe we can put a blue note here, right? Literally hold it out there, you know what? Right, so I have to play with it a little bit, like, okay, how can I make that make sense? I probably would move all of this stuff here. Right, it's kind of like having like pushing that stuff together. And when I play that turn, I would kind of keep going back up to that, which will
truly wild this place.
What, this one?
Yeah. Because I was going to make the point, what's the one thing we haven't done? Left up to some other note, yeah?
Yes.
That's the easiest thing is people like, oh, I'm just going to go. No, we've stayed basically notes
right
with the melody. The one thing you can do is displace.
So we could sorry. Right. So this is in our color scheme is green. Now, there are old ornamentation rules that people will say you cannot go more than a tone higher than what the skeleton is, right? If the highest note in the aria is a G, you cannot sing anything higher than an A. Well, I mean, that is a good idea for people who are prone to writing wild stuff that they cannot name, and also for writing high notes without tying them into the rest of it. But it's not actually truth, because when you study ornamentation of composers ornamenting themselves, also there's a lot of examples of composers ornamenting each other's material, right? There are Mozart ornaments of CPE, Bach arias and stuff like that. You do see them go quite far afield. In the Alcandro aria, there is an aria that's basically all middle voice and then it has a high E in it, right? So it's not that, but it was not a high loud note as Puccini, right? So you must not think about these notes as like, oh, that singer just put a high note. Well, you can put a B that is sweet. But if you sing like the biggest old fat B, like you're Mimi on steroids, that's a stupid idea, of course. And also if you sing, because that's what people think ornaments are, right? You need to write different harmony notes because I want to show off my high voice because my middle voice has a hole in it. My middle voice is breathy, but my B is fabulous. So I'm going to sing. Right, but if you have that same idea, but you tie it in. Quite a plaintive scale. Now you've made a shape. Thanks, Derek, for reminding me that we haven't done any. So you can go to other chord tones and then use units of pitches to connect it back into your skeleton, okay?
And, or you can sing, if you don't want to sing it, you sing even
yes.
Below.
Right, your imagination. And so when people do this a lot, you start to also develop your style. And when you look at ornamentation by singers, and there's a lot of it, right? There are a lot of books that has ornamentation written by singers because that is what they did. Like Cinti Damaro, Marchesi, these people all kind of have ornaments that they sang that either they wrote down or somebody else wrote down. And you start to see that they have their own expression. I'm going to stop the share and take my computer and sit somewhere where I can see the people who have been sitting behind the computer screen. So what you see a lot is that, that they developed that style. Many of them were composers in their own right. We once at Caramore many moons ago did an entire concert. Sorry, this is not my best. Must think about Instagram, like from above, right? We did once a concert completely of music written by famous singers who debuted bel canto roles. They were all composers, many of them were teachers, and many of them wrote vocalises and exercises for their singers, for their students to sing. Okay, now, Derek, let's talk chat, let's talk questions and comments for a hot second.
Yeah, good.
We're good? Everything's good in the chat?
Good.
People in the room, any questions, comments?
I just find it quite fascinating how you use of color. It makes it so easy to be creative with your embellishments, that you can just sort of slot them in and see if it works or not. But I think it's very
when we first, so we developed this during COVID, right? When else do you have time to sit and think about what color return would be? I mean, of course, I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about it. It just kind of developed. Also, at some point, people were like really dark, because I have bright red for scales and passing notes and dark red for moderns. People were like, oh, couldn't you have picked it? Well, I was like, I wasn't thinking those were the colors that was on the iPad. So I used that. But, and in the beginning, people were like, nobody can remember what's what color. It's only in your head that it works. But it really actually does work, because it really helps you to have, what's that?
We'll find this very
Archifils.
where if you take an already ornamented.
This
Arya,
happens
like
tomorrow,
Archifils,
yeah.
We'll do it tomorrow. And if you force yourself to color code every note that is not the skeleton, so you first find the skeleton and you color code every note that's not the skeleton, then you see what the composers themselves did, right? Because you have to account for every one of those pitches.
Right. So if you're interested, like famously, Archifils is an ornamented aria, right? Everybody knows that. The singer was very young. Mozart was like, she's not going to do a good job ornamenting it, so I will ornament it for her. So nobody has any problem singing all those notes in Archifils. And so and this has been done before, right? This has been done before, that has been deconstructed to the skeleton. What we did, which I think is quite original, is that we then ornamented the skeleton ourselves and came up with a quite different Archifils, but that still sounds like Archifils because it uses the same skeleton. Even though I actively, and this is really the stuff that, you know, that in all of the sadness of COVID, that was a blessing, because when else would you have the thought to think, actually, even though I must say, I must not lie, I came up with this idea really for the book. We didn't do it during COVID because I wanted to do something that hasn't been done before. And Archifils is famously deconstructed. And what people often do is they will look at how Archifils is ornamented and then say, now let's ornament Devieni non tardar. So that is the traditional thing that people do when they talk about ornamentation. Which is not a good,
intervals are too distant.
Right, it is not a good aria, but ornamenting the skeleton of Archifils really makes sense, right? And so screwing up. Okay, can you hear me? Okay, and there's nothing weird happening?
No.
No, it's because my computer is dead. Okay, because we just have multiple devices on. Okay, I'm back. Melanie, what's your question?
Phoenix was first, I think.
Okay, Phoenix, you're first. What's your question?
Oh, thank you. I had a quick question, two quick questions. The first one
Yes.
is for an opera like the one we were just talking about, Mozart's opera, La Finta. This is one where we can just try practicing this ornamentation idea. I don't know why I just thought that because I don't know, like that aria is a little different than mine. So, but the entire opera is appropriate for trying this process out.
So, Phoenix, one of the things that we have not talked about, and which is very difficult to talk about just in general terms, because it's kind of a case-to-case basis, is how do you know what is good to ornament, right? So one of the ways to know what is begging for ornament is like when you kind of look at things that you have seen Mozart ornament, you're like, ah, that sounds like that. This is really, that's how you start to have that idea. If there is a lot of moving notes already, it is doubled with the orchestra, that is not a good candidate for ornamentation. So it is hard. That's why I'm coming to, that's why I'm coming to East Lansing, right? Because I will help you figure out like which are the best arias that is appropriate for. You can almost always slap a mordent on something, right? Because you can almost always sing instead of ta-dum, ta-dum, or a nachakatora, right? So these tiny little moments you can almost always use, but you have to kind of let yourself be guided with your musical ear. And you say, okay, this doesn't seem appropriate. Also, one of the things to remember is what is the tempo of the aria. I, a couple of years ago, did a opera with a singer who arrived with a whole set of ornaments that was appropriate for the aria at half tempo. We're like, well, it's very nice that you created those ornaments, but it doesn't work actually in the tempo of the aria because you slowed all of it down in order to make all of your notes make sense. So you have to ornament the aria so that it can work at the tempo that is appropriate for the aria and in the spirit of the aria. Don't write languid ornamentation for an aria that is like peppy and so that is there are things to know. You cannot use this kind of ornamentation on every aria, but arias like this. There's another aria.
Right?
Well, this is
Pekka.
yeah, and we'll
We
look.
can talk about it tomorrow.
Yeah, we can look at the arias and tell you kind of which ones. There's Dolce Amor something, which is Melanie's, maybe somebody knows, it's number 19 was the other aria I was going to look at, is also tailor-made. Those are the two arias that you really tailor-made for this kind of languid ornamentation. Other question, Phoenix?
Yes, thank you for that. That's helpful. The other one was just how do you balance knowing it's still an appropriate kind of question, like how to know if your musical ear, if you're hearing the appropriate thing. Because I know for me, if especially this is all very new, I think I would hear all these things and it would sound really good to me because I know what I like. But the minute that I perform it, I just know that it would be like, this is not appropriate. How do you balance that? Because I like a lot of different things. And I know it doesn't always match with every genre.
Okay. So what is style when it comes to ornamentation? What is style in any case, right? It's like, if you write something and you're like, Mozart would never have written that, you can't do that. Because that's not in the style. How do you know? Well, if you know a lot of Mozart, you know whether it sounds like Mozart or it sounds like Beyonce, right? You're like, that is a kind of, Phoenix is like, tears crying. Yeah. Phoenix, you're also good with your emojis on Zoom. I'm very impressed, right? So you have to just be honest with yourself. Sometimes people come with wild ornamentation. They're like, I like that. I'm like, okay, fine. You like that. But really in your heart of hearts, when it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you wake up in the night, do you really think that that is appropriate in a Mozart aria? Well, no, I don't. I mean, I like it, but that makes it into something that it isn't. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, I love you. I can't wait to see you. Melanie.
Yeah, actually, that was pretty much my question, but I was just having a memory of the fact that we did a little bit of a scenes program and did Sularia and added paired appoggiaturas for both women, and it was enchanting. I mean, it was absolutely just like people who know Sularia like the back of their hand went, oh.
Next time do the cadenza that's in the Garcia treatise?
There is a cadenza, a quite wild out there cadenza in the Garcia treatise for Solaria, which was
Ooh.
performed at Melanie. Is like, I'm on that. Yes. There's in the chat, people are saying Mozart would have loved modern music. Absolutely would have, right? But you know, he didn't make it past 30. So like he missed out sadly on rock and jazz. He would have loved jazz. I think he would have loved jazz more than rock, maybe. But
the two things that to keep in mind with ornamentation, and not that I'm the best at it, is that
you're very good at it.
not yet. But you know, we all learn over time. So you get good at by doing it, just like speaking Italian or singing or playing piano. But look at what Mozart wrote that were other things, but also look at what came after him. So Mozart is like this thing that then there was Rossini, and then Rossini, there was Donizetti and Bellini, and like everybody inspired the next person. So people started composing what people were ornamenting in the previous music.
That's a very important point, because lots of times people will say, oh, well, if I do that, that kind of sounds like Rossini, Mozart. Well, that can be very appropriate, because you will see that what people did in adding to music is what inspired the motion towards the next style. You just don't want to jump 100 years, right? You jump 15, 20 years, moving yourself along, figuring out how the, but what is so fun about it and what is so underexplored is how active your participation in the creation process is, beyond just figuring out where your jaw and your tongue should be. And I think that singers sing so much better when they take this kind of ownership. What I'm very thrilled is that I have not yet had the question of what if the conductor doesn't like it? Because normally when we teach this stuff, that's the first question. Oh, this is great, I will, right? We have the conductor here. She's like, she will love it. But, you know, don't ask yourself that question, right? I shouldn't even have said it out loud, right? Because what you want to do is to bring your knowledge, right? There's a lot of talk about empowerment of singers and empowerment of artists. And what we are doing is we are empowering you with knowledge. So don't let it always be like the question of like, okay, I know this, but what if somebody doesn't like it, right? First, like take up the armor of knowledge and wear it proudly. And then, you know, like, let's cross bridges when you come to it. Phoenix, did you have another question? Or that was just a hand coming down?
Nope, that was just coming down.
That was just a hand coming down. Okay. Anybody else? We are, I think, at time, and we probably need to go. I want to take up the armor of courage. Yes, take up the armor of knowledge. Yeah, that's I must say, it's the most important thing that we do is like trying to share knowledge, historical knowledge and practical knowledge, and allow people to use that for themselves, right? And to really be empowered. You cannot be empowered without knowledge.
If you go in somewhere with a beautiful set of ornaments that you execute clearly and beautifully, and best if you have them written down somewhere, people are too busy with other people who are not as prepared as you are to bother you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Absolutely. So for everybody, and I must say, I have done this kind of work like for a long time with very young students. I used to teach this to even though my classes was never about ornamentation, but I would be like, I'm pretty good at teaching ornamentation. Who wants to learn? And they'd be like, yes, I want to learn how to do that. And I would say in every 10 undergrad students, there are at least 2 or 3 who really take to it and really love doing it. There's a much higher percentage, because people are always like, oh, only 1 in 100 singers will be good at that. It's not true. There are lots of young singers who grow up with like riffing or with popular music that has ornamental ideas in it. It's not foreign at all for young singers to glom onto the idea. If you are such a singer, you must get out your colored pencils. The only way to get good at it is to write it down. Please don't tell yourself that you can listen to 100 YouTube videos and then put that in your brain and then some stuff will come out that will be coherent, right? Because you'll steal one thing here and one thing here and one thing here, and it will sound like, you know, Joseph and his amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat, and you'll be like, there is no cohesive language that is knitting this stuff together. So color pencils, if you have an iPad, it really is a fun thing to do, and it's easy on iPad. You can use levels, you can write, or what do you call it? Not levels. Layers. You can use layers, you can write different ornaments, and you can really just play around and feel that you are really a co-composer. That is what you want to become. Okay,
Right.
Derek and I have earned ourselves dinner, which is what we're going to do. Yonona, I'm glad you have fun, and I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Tomorrow we deconstruct archifiels, and we will also talk about writing variations on a skeleton ourselves, which is in the book as well. Okay, it is really great to see you all, and we will see you tomorrow. Ciao, ciao.
Kids just end the meeting.